Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the Horned Frog Blitz podcast. We're going into podcast number 3 of the 2015 football season. I'm Jeremy Clark, joined always by my friend and colleague, Jeremiah Glenn. Jeremiah, how's things going for you tonight, man?
Going pretty good. Another good weekend of football is in the books right now.
Well, before we get started, I know a lot of people are going to hear this tomorrow morning, but give me your prediction for the Cowboys game that's going to be starting here in about, I guess, over the next hour.
I think the Cowboys are going to win. I have no idea as to the score. I don't know. I think Dallas' offense is too solid even without the running back. So give me the Cowboys by about 10 points probably.
You know what Jerry says in this situation, right?
No, I don't.
We're going to win. That's right. We're going to win.
That sounds just like Jerry.
That's my fake imitation. It's pretty bad, but hey, I have to do it anyway.
It's the best one I've heard. I don't know.
Hey, but anyway, let's talk a little TCU football. We're going to talk about the Frogs 70-7 win over SFA on yesterday. We're going to go around the Big 12 a little bit. We're going to talk about this week's battle for the Iron Skillet against SMU, a team that, shouldn't be overlooked, and go around again the Big 12 and talk some commitment performances. But let's first just dive into what we saw yesterday, your analysis of TCU's 70-7 win over SFA.
I think that was the perfect game for them at the perfect time. I think they needed to work on a lot of things, work out some kinks. They needed to get a lot of young guys some meaningful reps in game time situations, different scenarios that you can't really show in practice. So I think they got what they needed to see out of that. Obviously, the talent level of an SFA is far below that of even an SMU. But the fact is you got a lot of young guys, a lot of very meaningful reps that's going to pay huge dividends down the road.
Yeah, we're up in the press box watching this, and you could tell early on that SFA was going to be overmatched in this game. But from the looks of it, it looked like SFA was going to go on the board first. They drive down, and unbelievably, they go for it on 4th and 10, I think, from the 10-yard line. And we're all kind of just looking at each other thinking, man, if you're an FCS school and you're coming into the number 3 program stadium, I would have kicked the field goal right there just for your self-confidence. I mean, just getting some points on the board. But obviously, TCU does a good job of surrounding them. And from that point on, their offense just goes wild. I think they scored 5 consecutive drives. Boykin ends up throwing for 4 TD passes on the day. And a lot of good things come out of this game because you have a lot of younger players that got to see playing time. Gary said after the game that they really tried to slow it down in the second half just because they knew if they kept going at the rate they were going, the score was going to get out of hand really early and probably be even more than a 35-0 lead at halftime. So I like that they slowed down a little bit. Us watching from the press box and probably you guys watching from the stands knew that TCU probably could have put another 80 points to 90 points on that defense. But overall, just like you said, Jeremiah, I love the fact that they came out and had a win like this. Struggled offensively against Minnesota, but coming out and scoring 70 against SFA gets their confidence back a little bit, and they move next to SMU.
They looked a little more crisp in this game. I still saw some things I'd like to see worked on. It's hard to nitpick a 70-7 win. I would like to see Trey still read the defense a little bit better. He made some great throws. He didn't even play 2.5, maybe not even 2.5 quarters.
No, he didn't even play 2.5.
So, it's really hard he got those for 285 and 4 touchdowns. You can't knock that. I'd love to see some more of Kyle Hicks still. I thought he was a bright spot there. I don't know if it was just precautionary with Aaron Green. I'm pretty sure that it was just to get him some rest. I know they were working on his growing on the sideline, but It's nothing serious. He fought through that all spring and in fall camp. So, just as far as the health of the team goes overall, except for the one glaring injury, they got out of the thing pretty much unscathed, and they got a lot of the young guys, a lot of, like I said, really important repetitions.
Well, we can dive into some positive and negatives of this game, and certainly with 70 points on the board, there's going to be a lot of positives and not many negatives when you hold an opposing team to 160 yards of total offense. But as you mentioned, the glaring negative is losing Kenny Ialoka for the season. I mean, is there some kind of curse going on in that TCU locker room, or at least the defensive side of the ball? Because we've been around the team for a long time. And I have never seen so many starters go out with injuries this early. But, man, I hate it for Kenny because he was really primed to have a good year, in my opinion. He was looking good the first 2 games, and obviously the secondary was looking good as an entire unit the first 2 games because they haven't been giving up a lot of big plays. But certainly going to be a tough replacement. Michael Downing, a former walk-on receiver, comes in and gets an interception in the game, but he also got beat a couple times, and he does that against Baylor or even SMU this coming week. That play is not going to be an incomplete pass. It's going to be an easy touchdown if he doesn't get his head turned around a little bit sooner.
That question was mentioned on the board today, or that scenario was brought up on the board, rather. They said, if that was Baylor or Tech or somebody with an explosive offense, that's a touchdown. I'll do you one better. If that's Tech or Baylor, they go at that same play 12 times because they know that's there all day long. So Michael Downing is going to have to take that as a learning situation. Man, I hate this for Kenny. I really do. He's a good kid. He was really starting to come into his own. The silver lining, if there is one, is that he does have a red shirt year.
Yeah.
He'll be able to come back next year and rehab and come back. But you really hate to see that for a kid that's worked his tail off, and he's kind of waited his turn, and he got a chance, and that happens. But, Michael Downing obviously in practice has done enough to get the approval of Coach Patterson to have him in there ahead of
Coach Glasgow.
Yeah, ahead of a guy like Ridwan Issahaku, who was a recruited player that came in on scholarship. So
it just goes to show it doesn't matter if you're a 4-star kid or a walk-on. They're going to put out the guy that's playing the best in practice.
Absolutely.
They don't have any obligation to play a guy that's rated higher by us recruiting knuckleheads.
Yep.
Just because they're a 4-star. If a kid comes in and he's a walk-on and he's playing better than any of the scholarship players, then obviously they're going to get a chance to play. And I think over the years we've learned that pretty good, considering they've started guys like Joel Hasley, and if you just look on offense with guys like Bart Johnson and Curtis Clay, and just a lot of those guys that are walk-ons at TCU's program somehow or another get in and make an impact. And I wasn't surprised in the least to see Michael Downing out there in the secondary for the Frogs.
No, and he did well. I mean, on the interception, I think Zach Conk pretty much ran out of real estate.
I think the lizard skin helped because I think he threw right to. I thought Michael Downing was probably one of his receivers.
I think so.
He just telegraphed that whole throw.
But the fact is, he made the play.
Yeah, he made the play, and
yeah.
I hope he makes the play. I mean, it was right between the 1 and the 6.
You better.
I mean, it's a great pass by Zach, probably his best pass of the day for the SFA quarterback.
That's rough.
Coincidentally, he completed 11 passes for 9 yards. Have you ever seen a stat line?
I've never seen that, and I heard Brady Quinn when I went back home and watched it. I think Brady Quinn was bringing up that stat, and he said he'd never seen that. I don't know that that's ever happened. A guy completing at least 10 passes and having more completions than he does passing yardage. That's your unreal stat of the day right there.
Well, that brings us into the positives because, I mean, the secondary was just all over the place yesterday, whether it was Derek Kindred, Denzel Johnson, Ranthony had a good game, Nick Orr had a good game. They, other than a few, I think the longest play was a 10-yard pass, but those jailbreak screens, they were all over them. They were all over the hitches. I mean, they did not allow them to get any space whatsoever. A few times they did get behind the secondary, as we mentioned earlier, with Michael Downing being out there, but overall, man, just an exceptional job by that secondary.
SFA could not get open. I mean, they couldn't. They could not break a receiver open. They have a Kansas State transfer in there, so it's not like they're running all 1AA kids out there. But that guy couldn't get open, Judah. It was a perfect example of what a well-coached team does. Even though they're young, they're well-coached. But, man, what about Denzel Johnson? That guy was all over the field, and was he not fun to watch yesterday?
He just really came into his own, and that's the Denzel Johnson we've been hearing about from Coach Patterson the last couple years. And, man, just another classic steal. The kid played quarterback in high school, played some safety, and just an outstanding athlete. That 50-yard interception return he had. Man,
was it UTSA his only other offer coming out of school?
UTSA was his only other offer, and, I mean, I got to tell you, he was extremely close to committing to UTSA just because they were on him so much longer than anyone else. And he was pretty close to that coaching staff down there, so you never know. I mean, the two guys playing in the secondary for TCU, Kindred and Johnson, both UTSA leans all the way up until basically the final weeks of their recruiting processes. But
so thank you to Larry Coker and the UTSA staff for your awesome evaluation.
I'll tell you what, UTSA does an exceptional job of evaluating guys, and they're another staff that doesn't look at star rankings or anything else like that. They're gonna recruit with their own evaluations, and I'll tell you what, those guys know how to recruit, and I'll guarantee you, if TCU knows a kid has a UTSA offer, it's worth looking at them. So, but back to Denzel, I thought he played exceptional. Had a great break on the interception return. Almost had another circus interception on the sideline.
Man, he got up on that one.
But talk about reading those outs on those trips formation, those little outs. I mean, he was just pummeling the receivers. But the guy I want to talk about right now that just really and truly impressed me the whole game was Traven Howard.
That was in my opinion, the most impressive guy. And that's hard to say over what Denzel did, but that was my most impressive player in the game yesterday on defense. A guy that's never been a linebacker, steps in, undersized, but man, does he not have those. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say Paul Dawson. I just did. But he's got the instincts. You can see he reads the play, he diagnoses it, and he flies to the hole. Now the question is going to be, can he hold up over a full season because of his size? But as far as play recognition and stepping up, he's not scared to step in there and hit somebody.
Yeah, despite him lacking the size of a true linebacker, I mean, he will put his head in the pile, and he did that a few times. That jailbreak screen that he had, I want to say in the second, or maybe it was the first quarter, I mean, he just totally annihilated that whole play.
Yep.
And that was the play that Gary mentioned after the game in his post-game press conference, that when Traven made that play, he knew he was having a special night. So he ends up leading the team with 9 tackles.
3 tackles for loss.
Yeah, 3 tackles for loss. And just his athleticism, if he can play that way against a spread offense that moves you out, I'm comfortable with him playing against the SMUs, the Baylors, the Texas Techs. A lot of these teams, you're not going to see a run, smash-mouth football team in the Big 12. You're going to see some running teams, but you're not going to see anyone that's going to line up like a Wisconsin or a Minnesota or a Big Ten team and just run the football straight at you the whole time. But, yeah, I was really impressed with Traven, and coincidentally enough, his linebacker partner, Montrell Wilson, making his first start, 9 tackles as well, first start ever.
All over the field. What the Frogs lack in playmaking ability, in experience, they make up in athleticism. They've got some really young guys that don't have the reps, but man, the future's really bright when you look at how well they cover the defenses, how well they cover that field from sideline to sideline.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for a team to beat them, laterally. You are to get to the corner on Montrell Wilson or Traven Howard. It's going to be a struggle for you. They just possess too much speed, and they really look like they've paid attention in practice. And they know where to go right now.
You're talking about 2 players that were safeties in high school, so the speed is there, the athleticism is there. Them just learning the nuances of playing linebacker, it's going to come with more games.
People were a little concerned that, with Mike Freeze being out, you might be down. It was a huge question mark. What are you going to do? You got already a true freshman starting. Now you got to find somebody to step in. I was real curious to see who they were going to pair with Ty Summer. When the Montrell Wilson was announced, that was great. But once you saw Traven step in there, and you saw those 2 together, you could tell that they clicked instantly. The defensive line guys in the post-game presser were even talking about how they were really impressed with how quick those guys gelled and really, hit on all their assignments. And I think it gave the rest of the defense a little bit of excitement to see that these young guys stepped right in and didn't skip a beat.
Yeah, that's why, obviously Mike Freeze is a very talented player. Otherwise, he wouldn't be starting against Minnesota. But what I kept telling people over and over and over was Mike had 1 game under his belt. It wasn't like Montrell Wilson was replacing a 5th-year senior. And I know a lot of people were concerned with the linebacker depth. I get that. But when you have enough players that can move over, like Paul Whitmill obviously moved back to linebacker, and you have a guy like Traven Howard who went out there and showed a ton of people the talent that he has, and the success he can have moving forward. But yeah, man, you looking at both those guys, 18 tackles collectively, and they looked like they knew where the play was going before SFA knew where it was going. And it didn't take very long for Coach P to pull Ty Summers and put Traven in there. And I think you're going to see your starting 2 linebackers for the rest of the year. Knock on wood that nothing drastic happens.
You could hear it in Coach P's voice in the post-game press conference talking about Traven. He's really excited about him. Obviously, there's tougher opponents coming up on the schedule, but you have to love this game as a building block for these young linebackers. And I know they're excited. This gives them a lot of confidence that they can step up and play that position. And like I said, I'm excited to see going forward what this morphs into, because the athletic ability to cover receivers and running backs out of the backfield at the linebacker position this is probably the best I've ever seen.
Of course, Gary likes them because they can run. He loves guys that can run, and he's even said after one of the practices earlier in fall camp that this might be his fastest team he's ever coached, as long as they know where they're running to, as long as they're running to the right spot. So pretty high praise from a coach that's been around and seen some pretty good defenses over the last several years.
How about the compliment from Patterson last night for Traven, saying he made a play or two that Paul Dawson wouldn't have made, or any of those guys last year, because just from the sheer speed. So a lot to work with there with those two guys.
Defensive line was pretty good on the day. I liked what Terrell Lathan did. He had some good quarterback hurries. Chris Bradley picked up a sack. Bryson Henderson forced a fumble early on, and I liked what he did. But defensive ends got to step up because they keep going down, it seems. We don't know if James McFarland will be back. I thought he was going to be back. I was told he could be back, but now he's going to have surgery on his toe on Tuesday. We don't know the status of Mike Tua'ua right now. He didn't suit up against SFA. So guys like L.J. Collier and Braylon Mitchell, those guys, and Tippa. I mean, Tippa had a really good game. I liked what I saw in him, and I liked what I saw in a lot of the young guys coming in. Jalen Austin, Jerrison Stewart, a lot of freshmen got a chance to play. Even Nico Smalls got out there, and he probably wants to forget his play, and Coach Patterson's probably going to be on him for the next week about them being out there when the kid just rattled off a 75-yard touchdown right up the middle. But, they'll learn from that kind of play.
What I liked about the young guys, and there were a ton that got their feet wet for the first time, was the game didn't seem too big for any of them. They all, to a man, acted like they'd been there before. Mm-hmm. They knew their assignment. They came in. They didn't look lost. They attacked. They played aggressive. And I was very impressed with Tippa. I was very impressed with the linebackers. Obviously, the young receivers. I mean, this just bodes really, really well for the future once these guys get more games under their belt. But, man, it was exciting to see the way these guys just stepped in, knew their assignment, and played a heck of a game.
Let me ask you a serious question. If you lined up 30 yards from Kobe Listenby, could you cover him on a deep route?
No.
Have you? The only reason I asked that is because did you see how far SFA safeties? There were some plays where if you're watching from home, you probably thought there was 9 guys on defense because their safeties. Where we're watching from the press box, it looked like they were 25
yards deep. They were 25 yards deep.
And some occasions, they were already lined up 20 yards deep, and they're backpedaling pre-snap as soon as the ball snapped to make sure they're not getting beat deep.
Well, you saw what happened when they didn't have him back there. He runs a simple post route, and against the best SFA corner that they had, was it Rosser? And he runs right by him, and it's got 10 yards on him, and it's like the guy never had a chance. He couldn't get a hand on him. And that's what world-class speed does for you, and that's going to be a mismatch against just about every corner in the country. So unless you've got some safety help, best of luck to you.
Well, enough about SFA. I mean, we're going to be like the players and forget about it, think about it for a couple days, but now it's on to SMU and the battle for the Iron Skillet. SMU looks like they have a little bit of life in them, man. They get a victory this past Saturday against North Texas, and first win for new head coach Chad Morris, and you can tell there's a lot of excitement around that program right now. If
nothing else, I mean, the talent level is not drastically different this year than it was last year, but if nothing else, Chad Morris has instilled a belief in SMU and in their players that they can win and they can compete. If you watch the Baylor game, Baylor and SMU, the first game of the year, they were with Baylor neck and neck into the third quarter. Yeah. And, obviously Baylor ran away with it late. Baylor has superior talent to SMU. But he's got those guys believing over there. And TCU knows this, and they don't need to hear it from me or anybody else, but they know this. But that's one team you don't want to take lightly. They're going to come across town. They're going to try to win the Iron Skillet, and you don't want SMU to be the team that knocks you off your perch again. So you have to be ready for this game. They're going to test you with Matt Davis at quarterback. He's a true dual threat that could give TCU some trouble running the ball. But that's why I'm even more excited about Montrell Wilson and Traven Howard, because he's not going to be able to run away from those guys.
Yeah, the thing with playing the 4-2-5, usually when you play a fast quarterback, a dual threat guy, you're going to give up some yards. And I mean, heck, even they gave up some yards to Zach Conkey yesterday against SFA. And,
Not many.
I mean, you know what I mean. Early when they were driving down, obviously he didn't rush for 100 yards, but he showed a little bit of escapability. And Matt Davis is one of those guys that can certainly make some plays with his arm and legs. And one of the top quarterbacks in the nation when he came out of high school, and was at A&M, transferred. And just to show you how much SMU's improved, I mean, they beat North Texas 31-13 last year. North Texas beat them 46-6. So that just shows you the difference in believing that you can win. I mean, Davis throws for 171 yards and 2 scores against North Texas, but he adds 125 on the ground.
Yeah.
And they're playing a lot of young guys themselves. So SMU, maybe in a couple of years, is going to be one of those teams in the AAC that is, contending for a championship.
You guys might recognize a receiver this week that TCU looked at, pretty significantly. Cortland Sutton from Brenham.
Yeah, Cortland's a good kid.
Big athletic receiver. If you've watched him in the first couple of games, he's looked like he's a pretty tough guy to cover. And his height against TCU's smaller corners will be something to watch. That's why it's going to be imperative that TCU's defensive line gets pressure on Matt Davis, but they contain him and don't let him run at the same time. It's going to be a little bit different pressure that they've seen in either one of the first 2 games as far as skill set. And I like the way the schedule's set up, though. You had Minnesota, so you get to work on a certain thing at first. Then you got SFA, who runs more of a spread. Now you got SMU that has the spread, but a little bit better skill set. So now each week it's getting better, and you're testing your guys more and more. And so by the time conference schedule rolls around, you should be ready to go.
A couple true freshmen are running the football for SMU right now, Xavier Jones and Braden West. Both those guys are speed guys. Xavier Jones had a pretty good game against Baylor, and I think Braden West did as well. But their offensive line isn't extremely strong. Against Baylor, they stayed with them. They were obviously missing Sean Oakman when they played Baylor. But Andrew Billings had some pretty good tackles when Baylor faced the Mustangs. But I don't believe they're going to be able to run straight up the middle against the Frogs defense. But I do know they are going to test them vertically. And as you mentioned earlier, they're probably watching that film on Michael Downing right now and seeing how he reacted to a vertical pass. And they're probably telling Cortland Sutton right now, hey, you're going to have a chance to go up and get some deep passes. And Cortland's a big kid. He's a 6'4" kid. So obviously when you're playing corners that are 5'10", you're going to have a little bit of a mismatch right there. So something to definitely watch. And Matt Davis, you got to give it to him, man. He's got a lot of confidence in his game right now. SMU's got a lot of confidence in their game right now. TCU, I don't think they're going to be on upset alert, but it's going to be one of those games where Auburn and Jacksonville State, I mean, do you want to beat a team that you're supposed to beat convincingly by a few points, or do you want to blow them out? And that's the kind of game this can be. I think TCU's going to win, but is it going to be a blowout win, or is it going to be a game that people are going to be kind of shaking their heads and worried about what the rest of the season holds?
You can't let a team like SMU hang around and gain confidence, and that's what TCU's going to have to work on, is putting them away early. I want to be the first to say I was wrong about Matt Davis. After I watched him last year, I thought he was just a highly rated kid that wasn't ever going to pan out. But it looked like he got kind of the same boost that Trevon Boykin did when Meacham and Cumbie came in.
Yeah.
A new coaching staff comes in, they utilize his skill set, and all of a sudden you got a guy that's playing at the level that a lot of people thought he was capable of.
And they still have a line brother. Prescott Line is still there. I think they've had a line for about 8 consecutive years.
It feels like that, yeah.
I remember this kid when the older brother was playing, and they were showing him in the stands, his father and little brother. But Prescott is always a guy that, he's just the big, bullish back. All you old-timers out there that like the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, Prescott's your guy, man. I mean, I just like football players like that, and I'm not trying to give too much credit to an SMU player, so don't hate on me out there. But
no, he's a hard-nosed player.
Prescott is a hard-nosed player, and I like his work ethic, and he's just a fun guy to watch. He's just a throwback football player. I think I would take a guy like Prescott Line any day of the week for my team, offense or defense, and watch out. I mean, he might be called upon to do some pretty special things against TCU, especially in short yardage situations.
I agree. I mean, that's a guy you got to keep an eye on. He's one of the bigger, more physical backs. So this is where they'll test my theory on the smaller linebackers, I guess. But I think you'll see Matt Davis with the ball in his hand a lot. I think they'll use him to run a lot. I wouldn't be surprised to see him take 15 to 20 run plays himself. So TCU's going to have to be prepared. But I think with each rep that these young guys got last week, their confidence continues to build, and I think they'll be ready for the Ponies.
The thing I like about this is it's a 7 o'clock game. I know there's going to be a lot of fans out there. It was a sellout for the SFA game. It didn't quite look like a sellout to me, but sometimes my eyes are bad getting into my older age. But I think this game will be pretty packed. Gives the fans all day to tailgate, and it's going to be a night game. And I love under the lights at Amon Carter Stadium, man. It's something special about going out there for night games.
I do as well. I mean, I kind of touched on this point in my 25 thoughts after the game last night. And it's maybe something that TCU wants to look at in the future. But if you continue to schedule teams like SFA, you're going to battle that crowd issue.
Yeah.
I thought for being SFA that it was actually a pretty good turnout. Obviously, there wasn't 45,000 butts in seats, but there was 40,000 there.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty loud crowd for portions of the game. But again, it's hard for the faithful to get up for a team like SFA. I understand why TCU does it. But I think, with the higher profile and with the way there's so much emphasis on your non-conference schedule, obviously they got home and homes coming up with Arkansas and Ohio State and teams like that, but you still maybe consider playing a team like a Arkansas State or a Fresno State or somebody like that instead of a 1AA team.
It's tough to get excited, though, when you're playing a FCS team and your team's just steamrolling them.
Yeah.
I mean, look at half. I mean, when it's 35-0 at half, there's
comes back.
There's no dramatics out there.
Right.
I mean, you're coming in to see, basically how many points they can score. If you're doing that against Texas Tech, heck yes, everyone's going to stay in their seats because they want to see it done to the Red Raiders. But no one's really caring about the Lumberjacks. It doesn't have anything it's not going to hurt you during the season or anything.
You actually start feeling bad for the Lumberjacks after a while. Those guys are out there battling their butts off, and they just didn't have a chance, and it's rough. But hey, those schools take those games for a purpose. They get a nice fat paycheck out of the deal.
Right.
It helps their program. So who am I to say it's a bad thing?
Well, let's talk some Big 12 football. Let's go around the horn like we did last week, talk some of these future opponents, and what game to you really stood out in your mind?
It's okay.
I know it's Eric Stryker in Oklahoma, right?
No, that was a great game. That was a great game, and I think that was a huge game for the conference. But I think the most surprising game to me was Baylor-Lamar. I'm sorry. I know Baylor poured it on late. But,
yeah, they did.
But how do you let Lamar score 31 points on it? How do you let Lamar even keep it close for a half? I'm sorry. It's Lamar, and that's unacceptable. But, yeah, I mean, the best.
Guess what? The coach's poll saw it. That was unacceptable. And
they got jumped.
You're still throwing the football late in the fourth quarter so you can try to beat a spread.
And you see them drop a spot in the polls.
You get jumped because it was a closer, wasn't it? It was a close game up toward the, early in the second half.
Yeah.
And, if TCU plays SFA this way, everyone's coming out of the woodworks.
They dropped 5 spots.
saying TCU's overrated this, overrated that. Sure, Baylor scored 66 points, but how do you give up 31 to Lamar?
It's unbelievable. But, no, the game you touched on, Oklahoma and Tennessee, that was a huge game. Oklahoma couldn't muster anything for the first 3 quarters.
They come back from 17.
Yeah, and Baker Mayfield is able to battle back, and he keeps making plays. I sit there and I DVR'd that game, and I watched the whole thing today, actually, and I couldn't get over how many plays that the pocket broke down. Mayfield escaped, kept the play alive with his feet, and made a throw downfield. He was very impressive. I mean, he took some big shots, but he just kept coming after him, and I feel like Tennessee got a little conservative there at the end of the game, but hey, you went on the road in a 100,000-seat stadium in SEC country, and you come out with a win. That's good for Oklahoma. That's good for the conference. And they're going to be tough in Norman this year.
I'm still trying to figure out how Baker didn't get more attention coming out of high school. I mean, he obviously won at the highest level at one of the top high school programs in the state and the nation, for that matter, at Lake Travis. And
it's just how recruiting goes.
He just gets it done. And I like you, respect what Oklahoma was able to do in front of that many fans and get a win on the road. It was a great job for them and a great great notch in the belt, however you want to say it, for the Big 12. It was great for the Big 12 to get that exposure out there.
And that's much needed, because if you look at the Big 12 non-conference games this year, there weren't a lot of opportunities for them to show themselves against other conferences, against good teams. Tennessee's not Alabama or LSU, but they are improving, and Butch Jones has really done a good job of building that program there. They're recruiting at a really high level right now. The fans are excited at Tennessee, and they are on the upswing. So for Oklahoma to go in there and battle through all that adversity when they really didn't have much going, that was a good win. I want to say this, though. I noticed Samaje Perine didn't get near the carries that he usually gets. Looks like Joe Mixon's going to take some of those away from him.
Yeah.
But I think if OU wants to go back and watch some tape, they might want to go back to feeding Perine the ball, because I was not that impressed with Joe Mixon running the football. I mean, he had a couple of nice catches out of the backfield, but other than that, Perine looks like your workhorse, and if Oklahoma wants to win some big games, they need to probably feed him the ball.
Obviously, OU looks a lot better with Mayfield at quarterback than they did with Trevor Knight. I still think he can move the ball on them defensively. It'd be a good game. It's going to be a good test for the Frogs going up to Norman again. It could be one of those very big games late in the year if Oklahoma does what people think they're going to be able to do over the next few weeks. Next score we want to talk about is Texas Tech, your best friends, the Red Raiders. They go on, they stay at home and they beat UTEP 69-20.
They still haven't played a team with a pulse, but they've still scored over 60 points in each game.
That's Jay Glenn, HFB, right?
HF Blitz.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the Tech fans that want to hate on you, they can tweet at you.
Hey, I'm saying they haven't played a team with a pulse, and I'm sticking by that. But I am saying this: you still score 60+ points in each game. That's a force to be reckoned with. And TCU, with one more game before they go to Lubbock, they better get their defensive backfield ironed out exactly the way they want it, because Texas Tech is going to test them. And we all know the crazy things happen in Lubbock, and you better bring your A game, because you sure don't want to see your season go down in Lubbock.
I'm still saying this game's going to be at night, just because Texas Tech's probably going to be undefeated, and TCU's probably going to be, or they're going to be undefeated as well. Mahomes goes off again, and I really like Mahomes. I liked him a lot when he was coming out of White House. He throws for 361, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. And, when they played TCU last year, he was in there and they drove the ball right down the field on him. He's a guy that can make plays with his legs, and obviously he's off to doing some big things for Texas Tech right now. But Texas Tech, as far as defense, they really don't have much going on right now.
No, and that's the thing. TCU should be able to move the ball and score, but I just can't get out of my mind. I started thinking about it today. Go back and look at the last few road games. Look at Kansas. Look at West Virginia. Look at Minnesota this year. TCU's offense doesn't seem to really click as well on the road. I'm throwing out, obviously, the Ole Miss game because that's a neutral site game.
Yeah.
But when I'm going back and thinking, I'm like, I really don't see the consistency on offense that you want to see on the road. So they're going to have to bring it. The Washington kid, the running back for Texas Tech, he's probably one of the more underrated players in the conference. I think he had 12 carries for 130-something yards in this game. He's very explosive out of the backfield. You saw what he could do last year. So they've got weapons. They're going to score. The thing is, they're not going to be able to stop TCU as long as TCU doesn't shoot themselves in the foot.
Doesn't Texas Tech have Arkansas next week?
I believe so.
I mean, if they do, Arkansas is that's definitely a game that's winnable by Texas Tech, because, as we both saw, Arkansas lost to Toledo.
But hang on, I got a question. I had an Arkansas fan message me on Twitter and ask me why in the world a recruit would consider TCU over a program like Arkansas. I guess I understand where he's getting at right now, because that's ridiculous. You can't lose that game.
Well, Toledo, to their credit, was picked to win the MAC?
Yeah.
The MAC conference this year?
Yeah, okay. So. You're Arkansas. You're at home. You've got 65, 70,000 people there. You've got all this athleticism up over what Toledo can match, and you don't show up. And that's, I put it this way. They've got some offensive problems in Arkansas right now. Their quarterback is not impressive. The run game is really struggling. I was pretty surprised to see what I saw from their offensive football scheme.
Well, at least they get to play at home against Texas Tech. Yes, they do have Texas Tech next week. don't they still have a line that averages like 320 pounds per lineman?
Bielema's gonna put together a running team, but it's just not. It doesn't have the same, I guess, powerful look that he had at Wisconsin at this point. Maybe he needs another year or two to recruit, but yeah, I mean, Texas Tech might actually go up there and win that game. Is that it? Is that in?
It's in Arkansas.
I thought they played at Cowboy Stadium. Okay.
They may be. I don't know. I don't keep too much up too much with them.
I'm not sure either, but either way, I mean, that's a game that Tech could win. I mean, Arkansas better show up.
All right. We talk way too much about Tech all of a sudden.
I agree.
All right, let's talk about Texas Rice. Charlie Strongest has lived to see another week. Texas fans are happy now. They're going to win the Big 12 because they beat Rice by 14. And, it's going to be great to be a burnt orange Longhorn fan now.
Dig into that game, though. Look at those stats. It's impressive. Or it's interesting,
Doesn't matter. They're going to win the Big 12 now, 42-28.
If you take away a Dajé punt return, or was it a kick return, and then you take away some turnovers, the Texas offense didn't really do that much, and there's still a lot of questions. So, but it's a better result than obviously the first week, but and I think Gerard Hurd gives them a better option at quarterback, but they're still a long ways away.
Well, here's the thing with Gerard. They only let him throw the ball 7 times. I mean, they only completed 5 passes as an offense.
How many total yards did they have in that game? Does it show there?
They only had 277 total yards, and Rice had 462.
So, I mean, that's my point. They found a way to win the game, and that's obviously all that matters is wins and losses. But if you dig deeper, you see the truth. They're still a long ways away from being a dangerous challenger for the Big 12 title.
Well, the thing that Hurd did good at is he was good running the football. He showed that he was capable to lead an offense. He seemed poised. Obviously, he didn't have a lot of chances to drop back and get sacked. They did a good job calling the offense for him. And they kept it simplified for him. He added 96 yards on 10 carries and had a long of 35. But the guy that kind of changed that game was Dajé Johnson with his punt return, and it's a very close game if he doesn't have that punt return early on.
How Jonathan Gray has fallen. You look at that stat line: 9 carries, 12 yards. It just, you look back at coming out of high school, what he was and expected to be, and I understand there's injuries there, but man, that is
1.3 yards.
Yeah, that's something. I still think obviously it would have been different if he ended up at TCU, but I guess we'll never know. Obviously, we'll never know. Yeah,
bless Jonathan's heart, man. I mean, I don't know what to say about it. We've talked so much about it. There's really not anything else to say.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State and Central Arkansas. Oklahoma State wins 32-8. This was another close game at the half. I mean, Oklahoma State's only winning 10-0 over an FCS team. Obviously, they scored 22 in the second half and win pulling away, but
they seem to be struggling to score right now.
I'm not so worried about that game up in Stillwater all of a sudden.
I'm not either. I think Oklahoma State was one of the dark horses for the conference coming in, but they've showed me absolutely nothing through the first 2 games that makes me think they're going to challenge. They've really got to find something on offense that works for them because they're not moving the ball well right now.
Kansas moves to 0-2 on the season.
That was ugly.
Losing to former TCU offensive coordinator Justin Fuente,
yeah.
Or as some people like to call him, Fuentes. 55-23. Kansas struggled again offensively and obviously defensively. It's a rebuilding year for the Jayhawks. They have a lot of young players as well, but man, Memphis is doing some good things, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Memphis has another great year that you're going to see Justin Fuente's name on the top of a lot of coaching lists.
We knew that was coming eventually. He's a good coach. He learned from the best, and he just seems to have that air about him that he's gonna. You knew when he left he was going to be successful. Took him a little bit to get his kind of guys in there, and he's running his system now. And I'm with you. I think if they have another solid year this year. It may take one more after this, I'm not sure, but he's going to be going for a bigger job before you know it.
GP retires in 5 years, bring Fuente back?
I'd be surprised because I think the next head coach at TCU is already on the staff. That's just my personal opinion. Okay. That's my personal opinion. I think they could talk to, TCU obviously has got the defensive-minded guy like Chad Glasgow there. But a guy like Sonny Cumbie or a guy like Doug Meacham, I mean, who knows? If you can keep those guys around long enough, one of those guys might fall right into that spot.
The game I was probably the most impressed with this weekend out of the Big 12 was Kansas State's 30-3 win over UTSA. And that sounds like a stretch because people say UTSA. I mean, where is that? I mean, Larry Coker's down there. He's done a good job revitalizing that program. I mean, last week they went out to Arizona and lost by 10 points to a pretty good Wildcat team. Mm-hmm. And Kansas State comes down, shuts them out almost completely down in the Alamo Dome and holds them to 229 total yards. And there you go again, Bill Snyder, again having a quiet but successful year so far.
I watched some of that game, and UTSA came out fired up. They were hitting Hubner, the quarterback for Kansas State, a lot. Kansas State wasn't doing much on offense, but what hurt UTSA's defense was their own offense couldn't do anything. So they got tired. They got worn out. They gave Kansas State their run early on. I mean, I think it was a 7-3 game at halftime. So it was a lot closer than the 30-3 final. But what happened? UTSA just wore out. They wore down over the second half. They just don't have the athletes yet. But they're doing some good things down there. They're recruiting good kids, and anytime you play with Texas kids, you got a chance. So I think Larry Coker is going to continue to get better and better each year.
Let's dive into some predictions for next week. We didn't do this last week. So let's dive into some predictions for the Big 12 schedules next week. What do you think for Texas Tech and Arkansas?
If you would ask me this question last week, I probably would have said Arkansas hands down. But I actually think Texas Tech has a shot here. I'm going to go ahead and call Texas Tech with the upset.
Texas Tech with the upset. I'm going to say Arkansas just because I like the run-heavy game. Texas and California.
Is that
in Austin?
Oh, it's in Austin. I'll be honest with you. I haven't seen a lot of Cal this year. I'm not convinced Texas can play another Power 5 conference team real tough right now. So give me Cal in that one.
I'm going to go with Cal too. They're 2-0 on the year, playing decently, and they would have to play bad to get beat by Texas right now. They would have to kill themselves literally to get beat by Texas right now. So I'm going to go with Cal as well. Tulsa and Oklahoma. Oklahoma's going to win that.
Yeah, I got Oklahoma. I mean, Tulsa's off to a good start, but I think Oklahoma is a serious Big 12 title contender this year.
Toledo and Iowa State.
Wow. I'm sorry, after what I saw.
Go Rockets.
Yeah, I think the Rockets will take that one.
How about Oklahoma State and UTSA?
I'm going to go with Oklahoma State, but probably because they're at home. What else can you say about UTSA? You go to Arizona, you have Kansas State and Oklahoma State as your non-conference. Those guys are stepping up and playing whoever they can to try to get that brand out there. So I see what they're doing down there. They're trying to grow that program, but I think they take another tough loss this weekend.
Give me Oklahoma State as well. Kansas State and Louisiana Tech.
Kansas State. It's good for the Big 12. Louisiana Tech's always a scrappy team, kind of like Auburn, real scrappy. But no, give me Kansas State. For you guys that don't know, real quick, somebody posted on Twitter yesterday after Auburn pulled that game out against FCS Jacksonville State that they were scrappy. And I'm sorry. Tigers. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
And, of course, TCU SMU. TCU's heavily favored in this game. I'm going to go with TCU.
I'm going to go with I'm kidding. Just wanted to see what you guys would say. I'm going with TCU as well. I think SMU will get some points, obviously, but I think it'll be a comfortable win for the Frogs.
All right. Well, we talked about the Big 12. Let's move on to some future Frog action. You and I had a chance to go out last Friday to Mansfield to watch Mansfield Summit. Play Mansfield, got a chance to see Vernon Scott up close. We're going to dive into his performance and other performances from Week 3 action. But Vernon Scott, man, you talk about a kid that's just physically gifted, 6'2", 200 pounds. I was pretty impressed. There's some things he definitely needs to work on, but Mansfield Summit wins a pretty good game. I think Summit's going to be one of those teams out of Class 5A that's going to be a good contender. They beat Mansfield 44-28.
They've got some weapons on that team. They are going to be a team to be reckoned with in 5A. They've got a good-looking running back. Their quarterback is very solid. They've got a 6'6" receiver. They've got quite a few weapons on offense, and then I was really impressed with how physical their defense played. That's a pretty solid Mansfield team that they played, a 6A team, and they got the win after losing to that same Mansfield team for the last 5 years.
Yeah, and Vernon didn't get tested once, and not only did Mansfield not throw the ball, I mean they didn't even try testing him on a screen, nothing. They didn't want to go to his side at all. So basically what he does is takes away one half of the field.
Yeah.
And anytime you have a player on defense like that, your defense is going to be successful. It's kind of like what TCU had when Jason Barrett was there. He could take away one side of the field. And although Vernon will play safety at the next level for TCU, he did a pretty good job playing corner. We'd like to see him be a little bit more physical, but he was part of 6 tackles. But the thing that impressed you and I the most was his outstanding speed.
For a guy that big to run that well, that's a scary thought of what he's going to grow into. He is a big kid, and he can flat out fly. We saw him run down the opposing team's running back, who's a pretty good running back, from the opposite side of the field, and he just turned on the jets, and it was just like you just held your breath when he took off. It was like, wow, that kid can run. And anybody that was at that stadium had to think, man, that's the best athlete on the field, bar none.
It was about the time when you and I said we want to see him get tested that Mansfield broke that long run. Kennedy Brooks, who is a 2017 prospect for them, has a few offers already. He's a very good running back. He's pretty fast, and Vernon ran him down playing the backside corner. He did that not once but twice, and for you guys that saw the video, you can see his speed right there. And this kid ran a 4.42 at TCU's camp over the summer, and you're doing that at 6'2", 200 pounds.
Yeah, that's an exciting future.
That's why he has a TCU offer, and that's why they're excited that they got him.
And I want to clarify something. We were in no way knocking his ability, but we did both see the same things in his game. He does need to work on his physicality and is also just diagnosing plays, noticing when a run is coming his way to be able to come off of his man and come up and play run coverage. But that's something that can be taught. You can't teach his physical attributes. He's got the things that other prospects would love to have. And you take the coaching that TCU has with that natural ability, and it's a match that could really produce a top-notch player on defense for TCU.
Another big performance from the last week was Brennan Wooten. I mean, man, this kid just keeps putting up big-time numbers. He's already over 1,000 yards. He throws for 422 yards and 5 touchdowns against El Paso Franklin. This is a Franklin team that beat San Angelo Central last year, and he adds 2 more scores on the ground. So he combines for 7 touchdowns, and that 422 yards broke a 25-year-old record held by Shea Marin. So all you folks out there that were around high school football in the early 90s certainly remember Shea Marin's was a quarterback for Central and went on to play at Texas. But, man, Brennan's just having a great year so far. You know,
I still think he's severely underrated, and I think maybe if he keeps doing what he's doing, that'll change. But he's turning some heads. Like we said, you can really, really see all the work he put in over the offseason really paying off, working with, is it Richard Bartell?
Yeah.
Really, really working with trainers and working on his skill set, and he just seems so poised in the pocket, and nothing seems to rattle him, and he's got command of his huddle, and it's exciting to watch right now. He's doing a lot of good things on the field.
The thing that impresses me the most is his pocket presence. When the pocket starts to break down, his footwork is incredible. I mean, Richard Bartell has done an exceptional job coaching him, and his passes are on point. He's very accurate so far. 12 touchdowns with only 1 interception. Central's 3-0 on the year. They could be a team out of West Texas that's going to make a pretty good run. But I'll tell you this, and it's a pretty good opinion. But I know it's gonna raise some eyebrows. But through the first 3 weeks of the season, I'll tell you what, out of the 3 commits they have at quarterback, him, Sean Robinson, who's a 5-star kid, and De'Aaron King, Wooten's the best. Wooten is by far the best right now throwing the football.
Well, we always say, don't look at their ranking, look at their production. Look what they do on the field. And I'm looking at what he's doing, and I agree with you 100%. Right now, he looks like the most complete quarterback. He looks like he's doing the most on the field, and that's what matters. And then that's what TCU has to be looking at as well. They got to be thrilled with his commitment.
Another offensive player that had a big game that Wooten will be handing off to in a couple years is Travion Williams. Travion was kind of held last week. He only got 60 yards, and this week he busted loose, had 247 yards and 3 scores in their 41-24 win over Dayton. But yeah, he's almost up to 400 yards now in 3 games, and another big night for him.
Yeah, you combine his 400 yards rushing with his nearly 150 yards receiving. I mean, he's just such a threat out of the backfield. We could talk about him all day. Like I tell you, he's just the perfect fit for this TCU offense, and he's going to do big things in the future.
Dylan Thomas, another great athlete. Pascal's 2-0. I mean, remember when Pascal was just wondering if they'd ever win a game every year, and right now they're 2-0, and their 2 victories have been pretty big victories. They thrashed South Hills last week. They scored 72, beat them 72-42. This week they beat Dallas Wilson, which has a pretty good list of prospects themselves. They've got 2 or 3 guys that already hold offers, D1 offers, and they beat them 52-27. And Dylan has another big day throwing the football, 173 yards and a score, and adds 130 more on the ground with 3 more touchdowns. I mean, he's already rushed for 373 yards in just 2 games. He's got 8 touchdowns. So at this pace, he's basically on pace to score 40 touchdowns this season on the ground.
Well, Pascal's 2-0 because of Dylan Thomas, and only because of Dylan Thomas. They've got some other kids on the team, obviously, but when you look at what he's done on the ground and through the air, I mean, he has been a revelation for those guys. He was good last year, but this is a whole other level. I think these guys are what you're seeing from the guys that have been committed for a while is huge step-ups in production from their junior to their senior year. And if he keeps on this pace, like you said, he's going to put up 40, 50 touchdown season.
The thing that could be something to watch is if he keeps putting up these kind of numbers, there's going to be some teams coming around that will give him an opportunity to play quarterback. And obviously with TCU, he loves TCU, but he knows that they have 2 quarterbacks committed to him already. Why would he want to go there to make the 3rd quarterback? So I wouldn't be surprised at all if he continues to be on the pace that he's on, that some more teams come into the picture and offer him a chance to play quarterback for the next level.
You brought up to me when we discussed this SMU. I mean, that's SMU has talked to him, and they like him a lot, and they would give him that shot, and he would be really good in that offense as a quarterback. So hopefully the Frogs can hold on to him because he is an explosive athlete. Last
but not least, we're going to talk about our big guy, big friend, Shaywo. They finally gave him a chance to run the ball down there, and guess what? They win a game.
It doesn't seem like rocket science to me, but you look back at the first 2 games, he had 1 carry, and they were 0-2. All of a sudden, you give the kid 17 carries, and he goes for 164 and a touchdown, and they win the ball game. So maybe they finally woke up and decided that that's what they needed to do. I mean, when you have an athlete that big and that fast, you need to get him the ball if you can.
Yeah, you give the guy that's 6'2", 210, 15 pounds, the ball as many times as he wants. He also has a 49-yard reception in the game, but yeah, 1 carry in the first 2 games was pretty much unacceptable. But yeah, another big week for the future Frogs for TCU, and it's always exciting. Next week I want to get out and see some more players. But man, the future looks bright for the Frogs, especially on defense.
You just look at what they're accumulating with skill position kids and the linemen that they're accumulating. It's really hard to imagine a downturn in this offense anytime soon. So they're doing well on the recruiting trail, and their recruits just keep on performing.
One last guy to talk about, even though he doesn't have any individual stats, is our guy Wes Harris out there in Aledo. Aledo moves to 2-1 on the year. They pile up over 600 yards against Monterey.
Prepatech?
Yeah, Prepatech. Yeah. I think I did my R's right.
Did you roll it hard enough?
Yeah, I rolled it hard enough. They win 77-0, but they do it behind a strong 369-yard performance on the ground. Aledo's 2-1 on the year, and maybe they got some life in their skill players now.
We'll see. Even if they make the playoffs, I just don't see them going deep this year. They've got enough of a weak enough district schedule. They should be able to win enough games to make the playoffs, but I can't really see them making a deep playoff run this year.
Well, all right. Well, that's going to just about do it for us. You guys have been listening for us the last couple of weeks. We do appreciate it. Hope we got you guys caught up with all the Horned Frog action, the commitment action, and around the Big 12. Until next time, I'm Jeremy Clark for Jeremiah Glenn. Talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for listening, guys.